So we're joined now by Major Avraham Levine, and also who's a speaker at Alma Research and Education Center, and Jason Olson, Middle East expert and author. Welcome to you both. Welcome to World Tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, Jason, the Turkish Ministry of Trade said on Tuesday that it will no longer send to Israel items in 54 categories. And here I'm just going to name few: iron, steel, jet fuel, construction equipment, machines. I mean, many important things, items that any country needs. How is this going to affect Israel right now?
Well, I think Israel, in all of its history, has always looked for different sources and different countries to obtain the arms or resources that it needs, and so I'm sure Israel's diplomatic corps will continue to work with other countries that can supply the things that it needs to continue its war effort in different ways.
Yeah, and I think one of those headlines, I'm curious right away. I mean, I know that we have potential. We're not sure when exactly the Rafah operation by the F will take place. We're not sure about that. But one thing we do know is the continuing shadow war that is playing out. It's getting to a point which we haven't seen at this stage, with Israel saying very much it's going to strike Iran directly if Iran launches attacks from its territory. So, Major Levine, tell us, how close are we to this escalating to a point of no return?
You're asking the crystal ball question about the future. I can say that when you look at the attacks, I think all sides are being pretty cautious. If we take Hezbollah as an example, Hezbollah has been attacking mostly empty communities and army bases, and not many rockets into areas that are still filled with civilians. In the same way, we haven't seen a major direct attack from Iran's territory. Israel doing the same and trying to be as accurate as possible on all fronts so we don't reach the point of no return. And I think everybody's playing it careful and checking what the other side will do. But what I will say is that any mistake on either side will lead us to probably a way worse situation.
Now, Iran also says that it seeks to destroy the Jewish state and has developed rockets with a range that can hit anywhere in Israel. I mean, is this going to scare Israel right now? I mean, how dangerous is this? Can they actually repel these attacks if anything happens?
Oh, there's nothing new about the way they're speaking. There's nothing new about the weapons they have. They clearly have weapons that can reach Israel. That's happened before. In the past, drones have been attacking us from Iraq. Iranian drones from Iraq, from Syria, from Lebanon. The distance is not a problem. So the threat is definitely there, and they've been speaking the same against the Zionist entity, against Israel, against whatever name they decide to call us. So the threat is definitely there. And the only question is, when will they decide to use the threat to bring it to fruition, and are we prepared? And we're preparing ourselves on our side.
Indeed. And also, back to you, Jason, looking at the continued pressure. I mean, we've seen a lot of pressure now on Israel, especially in these last 2 weeks, even before the death of the aid workers. A lot of mentioning of diplomatic red lines not being crossed. President Biden also saying very much that he does not want this to escalate further. So how do you perceive this? Is this international pressure, if those court cases we all been mentioning out yesterday as well, Nicaragua taking Germany to court potentially, is this pressure having any impact in your mind of the IDF and Israel scaling back its forces, scaling back this offensive at all?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not speaking on behalf of the United States government, just as an expert. But I think that Israel is responding to the United States pleas and requests. We see the increase of aid trucks. Last I saw, at least 500 a day is what the Israeli side is promising. And President Biden has, he has said that he feels Israel is responding to his request for increase of humanitarian aid. But it's a very difficult situation. I think there's a huge concern in American politics for the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. But there's also an acknowledgement that Israel and the United States are fighting very similar wars. I think there is hot, kinetic action with the Houthis in Yemen, and so the situation of the Houthis in Yemen and of Hamas in the Gaza Strip are very similar. And so I don't think the United States wants to tie its hands as it has to continue to engage in the Middle East and solve the Houthi problem. So I think that the policy is going to continue to be the defeat of Hamas and the release of the hostages. That's going to be the Israeli hostages that are still in Hamas. I don't think Israel can end this war until it brings its own citizens that are trapped in Gaza home, and that's basically what any sovereign nation would do. Would continue combat until it can retrieve its citizens.
Now, Major, what happened on October 7th is, without a question, for anyone in the world, a horrible act of terror. I mean, there were many people killed, raped, and also kidnapped. Now, Israel said very straight right away that it's going to get Hamas. Now, on the way, IDF is killing thousands of people, little kids, women, I mean, anyone who is on its way. So my question is, did Israel so far achieved any of its goals, or is this just revenge and they don't know where to look, they're just going for it and shooting anyone that is on their way?
No, that's definitely not the case. From personal experience and from everything I read, but I was 2 months in the southern front as part of the Brigade Command Center in the south. And that's definitely not the case. No one's speaking about revenge here, but the threat is still there. If we do not finish the job, like Julian mentioned, and go into Rafah, we will get Hamas back in Khan Yunis, and then back in Nuseirat and Sajaiya and Zaytun, back to the northern part of Gaza, and then we're back to square one. What IDF is doing is IDF is going brigade after brigade, just breaking down Hamas control over Gaza. The fact that women and children and men, civilians all together, are being used as human shield, that's not our part of the war. When Israel puts soldiers in front of their civilians, less Israeli civilians are killed.
But at the same
when
time,
Hamas puts civilians in front of the soldiers, then that's what happens.
Yeah.
Now that's a sad circumstance and a difficult one. By the way, if you look at statistics from any war, there's a ratio of civilians versus armed personnel being killed. And we're doing way better than anyone in the world expected in such a situation of urban warfare with civilians around.
But at the same time, Major, if we may just interrupt you there, I mean, the rules of war are one thing, but I think also the battlefield, as you mentioned, is a completely difficult terrain here. Now, I think it needs to be said as well of how the IDF is conducting itself. I mean, just saying that it's conducting itself in the manner as other wars are fought, but we do have evidence here, and I think it's one of those statistics that we are seeing, which can be verified, that the loss, I think, of the IDF soldiers, around, I think, 257 at this point since October 7th, is the same number as aid workers that have also been killed. So, I mean, and those are non-combatants. I mean, there's so many layers to this, which I think this is a tragedy, and Israel potentially is not standing by the real rules of war.
But I would like to pressure you on that question that I had. I mean, where is, because you're talking about the job being done, where is Israel when it comes to this job? I mean, is it achieving its goals? I mean, can we talk about any successes when it comes to getting Hamas members?
we're down to the last brigade that's still operating. The last brigade still operating is in Rafah. That means 4 battalions that are still operating. And since we left Khan Yunis, they're moving slowly back to Khan Yunis. So that's what we're down to. All of the rest of Hamas is broken down. There's still, some of them are still there. The weapons are still there. The tunnels are still there. We didn't finish the job. I think it will take a very long time. And I realize that's difficult to understand from the outside for any civilian, definitely other places around the world. But when there's tens of kilometers of tunnels and they're using, again, any infrastructure that they can find, which is mostly civilian, then it's a difficult situation, and you see the circumstance, and we all agree that's terrible.
Well, that's why we have to ask these difficult questions.
One moment. I'm just saying, I do not understand the comparison to the amount of soldiers. First of all, over 600 soldiers were killed since October, including October 7th. In the maneuver is the number that you mentioned. But Israel doesn't want to kill aid. Israel doesn't want to kill journalists. Israel doesn't want to kill soldiers. By the way, we had friendly fire, so that killed our people themselves, including hostages. We clearly don't want that either. So I don't understand the comparison of blaming Israel for killing personnel, aid personnel, humanitarian aid. That also happened from other countries that send and dropped from airplanes, and people were killed. I'm not sure they were blamed for the people that were killed.
I also want to. Yeah.
Israel is doing its best in a difficult situation, and definitely mistakes happen, and we have to learn from them and improve.
Yeah, I mean, there's more I want to follow up on, but I think I also want to get Jason back in the conversation because all these points really, really tense and they matter. But I just want to get your view on this because, I mean, at the same time, no one doubts that Israel has the right to defend itself, that that is something that it is, as a sovereign nation, deserves to do. But it's just, I think, at some point, the proportionality of how that campaign has been conducted, I think, is where these things get very, very, very blurred and difficult. So, Jason, how do you assess, it's a big question, but looking at what's happened with the campaign so far, has Israel acted in the best of its interests? And if we put it on a list, I mean, how do you assess it? I know it's a difficult question, but what do you make of it?
Yeah, so I've been looking at this from a military point of view, and what Hamas has done is developed an entire military infrastructure underground, a subterranean military infrastructure with its bases, its weapons, its command and control center, its missile silos, its key leaders, the hostages. So it's basically, it's built its military infrastructure underneath the surface. And Israel, as a sovereign nation, has to go after Hamas's military infrastructure in a war to destroy it and dismantle it. But Hamas's tactics, which really are unique in the history of warfare, to lay out almost its entire military infrastructure underground, means that civilian institutions, civilian infrastructure is, of course, above ground. And that, unfortunately, has included aid workers and hospitals and schools. And that's all above the surface. So Israel has this extremely difficult situation that it needs to go underground to destroy Hamas. But in order to get underground, right, you have to drill. You have to get underground. And so and we all know it's very factual that Hamas is using all the civilian infrastructure, not just civilian bodies, but civilian infrastructure above ground as its human shield, its civilian shield. And so Israel's having to, unfortunately, tragically, having to penetrate through that surface level in order to get to its enemy underneath the surface. And I place the responsibility entirely on Hamas for, I would say, is a very cowardly and dishonorable form of warfare to to literally hide not just behind, but underneath its civilian population.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes without saying that we would not be at this position right now for not with the terrible actions we started with October 7th. So let's also be clear on that. But I guess from that point, looking at what has happened since then, it becomes incredibly difficult. Look, we'll have to close it there. We want to thank you both for your insights on this very, very delicate and emotional topic here. Major Avraham Levine and Jason Olson, thank you so much again, both of you.